Uncommon Mansplaining. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Welcome back. It feels good to be back in the saddle. Christian, how's it going?
Great, beautiful day in the Carolinas.
Yeah, well, for you, yeah, I'm finally officially in Florida, so I'm finally trying to get acclimated in my new place. I haven't set up the studio yet, but I hope you guys will forgive me. But so yes, this week we're going to talk about foreign policy, American foreign policy. We have to circle back to this every now and then because while we have plenty of problems at home, it's important to make sure that the problems abroad don't become problems at home. So with that in mind, let's first talk about Venezuela. As in recent news, we've had I think 5 drone strikes of these Venezuelan drug boats, and with the most recent one actually having 2 live captured Venezuelan drug lords, as opposed to all the others. I guess wiped everybody out. I think we've killed 27. So yeah, this is the first time we've actually captured people alive. And of course, the claims are that these are all heavily laden with these poisons, these toxins that they're bringing into America. But the concern is that we, the people, don't get to see much in the way of proof. So how do you feel about that?
All right. So obviously, the power to make war, the power to exert violence as a nation is a power we, right, government of the people, we are granting to the government, right, and they need to use it for our defense, right. That is generally the threshold. So, and historically, it's usually been nations doing things on an official basis that are contrary to our interests or against our self-defense, and we are acting against those nations. So these are obviously private criminal organizations. Right. So while the government of Venezuela is currently not our friend, we have been closer to them in the past. They don't really, they're not giving us a really hard time about this because they're openly criminal organizations that are dangerous to their government, destabilizing force in Venezuela. But it is sort of in the past, in the 20th century, rum runners, sort of people bootlegging a liquor from Cuba into the U.S. was, policed, but at the end of the day, like, what was getting into fentanyl. We could probably do a whole episode on fentanyl and the painkillers crisis. And for those of you who don't know, there's a lot of very good documentaries on it, how OxyContin and other sort of legal prescription drugs sort of expanded this essentially market for heroin. Like in the 90s, it was all about cocaine and crack cocaine stimulants. And we kind of went to war against cocaine against Colombia and kind of won that war. Pablo Escobar and stuff like that. And somewhat. But then things shifted, and all of a sudden heroin became a big player. Synthetic heroin, and this pharmaceutical heroin, which you could get OxyContin, hooked millions of Americans on it by getting it first legally, and then. And the thing with opioids, which your body builds up a resistance to them, and then so you need stronger and stronger amounts to feel any kind of high, right? If you take the same amount, you're just sort of getting rid of the withdrawal symptoms. So fentanyl was something that was developed medically, right? My wife took it when she was having our baby. Like they would shoot very small amounts of it into her spinal tap, like for her I want an epidural, right? And so, the nice thing about it is the duration of the pain killing is shorter than the normal opiates or heroin, right? Or essentially, like the duration of the high would be shorter, and so it's more controllable. But obviously, very small amounts or applied medically, it's perfectly safe. Well, what happens, is a very strong potent drug, so there's very small amounts of it create this. Is if hardcore users who have been addicted on various opioids like
heroin or whatever,
OxyContin, and then heroin, and then stronger kinds of of heroin. Now they take fentanyl and they get high off it, right?
Right.
Maybe it doesn't last very long. But if a normal person with a normal opioid tolerance takes that small amount while it's sold on the street, it will kill them.
Right.
They will die. And so it's very dangerous that either something that it's commonly mixed with other drugs on the street. Street drugs are not not regulated, and there's a lot of contaminants to give it high. And the drug addicts, longtime drug addicts, the idea that something stronger is actually more attractive to them.
Right.
But there's a danger. But even the people that aren't dying of overdoses, it's still right. We've seen in our inner cities, the people sort of hunched over and things. And so while the left, our country is trying to deal with those problems there, Trump has decided to attack the supply. And one of the major sources of supply is not only is in northern Mexico and in Venezuela. And he's talked very tough against both of those cartel groups.
Right.
What he has in Venezuela is a situation where these groups have gotten extremely wealthy because of drug trade for years and years and years, and they'd run through Central America without really facing much consequences, just huge profits. Okay. So now they're putting money into these really expensive boats, right? And other things, right? But they're going into international waters. They're going into ways where there's no country that kind of can protect them. We're not violating anybody's sovereignty when we police it. And so it's kind of created this area where we have nobody as internationally can tell us no. Right. And so now we have to sort of draw our own boundaries, create our own sort of doctrine. Yeah. And Trump has decided his doctrine on this is
Mansplaining.
Right. Well,
big surprise.
If people are in charge of this program, tell him it's a drug boat,
right,
to initiate a deadly strike, to a military grade strike, right, and so that's been successful, and he's publicized it, which I think is important too. If you're going to have a deterrence, which is what this is supposed to be, it's supposed to deter and stop them from doing this. We want them to stop sending drugs to America, to them see that it's not worth it. So obviously he's releasing the videos. He wants this. He wants people to know this is out there, know this is on the table, and hope that by those examples, this trade will stop. What we found is there's so much money involved that, and their value of human life, or the sort of risk rewards that would stop us, right? If we saw our friends boat get destroyed by a military grade missile, we wouldn't go on the next boat. We wouldn't be planning the next excursion. We would stop. Yeah. This hasn't necessarily incentivized or gotten through in the same way we would expect. Right. And so, so you said there are 5 at least confirmed kills.
Publicly acknowledged.
And what is appropriate for this going forward is this sort of endlessly, as long as somebody here says, we think this is a drug boat, anybody going high speed in the South Pacific gets a missile. And I think this is the thing, is like, while this is a big threat to our national security on a public health basis, and they are criminal organizations doing it, not official nations, is this still appropriate for appropriate military activity? What do you think?
I mean, so I don't, he's obviously the waters are muddied here, because he calls these drug gangs, foreign terrorist, units or whatever. But I just have to say that this is essentially a police action, right? Yeah. I mean, and it's like you said, it's in international waters. No one can protect them, but then again, no one can give us the rights to do this either, right? Yeah. This is kind of like a weird situation altogether. Now, my instincts tell me that the right thing to do is to maintain the police aspect of this, right? Mm-hmm. If we're supposed to be the policemen of the universe, I don't see why we aren't acting like it. It seems like instead we're treating this like it's a military engagement. Doesn't feel much like a military engagement. Now, it'd be one thing if we approached these boats and then were fired upon. Right, that's a little bit different, right? Or like we should have military support available in case that's the scenario. But I really don't feel like blowing these things, because part of the thing, is that this is the biggest problem is accountability, of course, right? Like it's like you said, we give these governments the right to perform violence on our behalf, right? That we trust them with this right, and yet this is basically a police action where they're blowing up any evidence that would be used to demonstrate that it was a correct strike, right? And just so I'm clear, I don't believe that saying I think this is a drug boat is enough for me.
All right, two things. So my Aiden, who was on the show, he right. So he was in the Coast Guard and in Miami and would go on these things where they would the Coast Guard would confiscate drug boats all the time.
Right.
They would take really nice boats. Sometimes they would destroy and sink them. Usually after letting the people jump off or leave, or sometimes confiscate them because they're really expensive, $500,000 boats kind of thing like that. Maybe we want these, or maybe we can use them.
Yeah.
Down there and stuff, and then take the drugs, and then they would have the drugs. They'd have the evidence for why they did this, right? And because when they first did this, Maduro was criticizing, the U.S. was taking Venezuelan flagged boats, but we could show him, here are drugs we seized off these boats, and we didn't have people killed, but they said and we have the boat, or here's a video of us sinking the boat. So we didn't confiscate the boat. We just sank it in the Atlantic. So the escalation here is they made an accommodation when they were going in areas where our Coast Guard wasn't patrolling. Right. The ocean's a big place.
Yeah, it is.
And we just don't have that many Coast Guard cutters.
Right.
So the big thing is with drones and satellites, we can monitor it.
Right.
And so now the big escalation is we're using air power rather than a Coast Guard cutter to come in, seize a boat and seize evidence. We're using drones. Boom, the boat's sunk or gone before we can collect any evidence. Now, the line that I can see of the changing would be that our satellites or our drones identify this boat and follow it. And as soon as it hits our territory, either within 200 miles of Puerto Rico or 200 miles of the U.S. coast mainland, then we nuke it, or then we shoot it, or something like that. We can even warn them ahead of time. So I'm wondering about the justification for why we're not waiting for them to violate our waters.
Right.
Is it because they're trying to hand this off to the Bahamas or some third party there, and we're stopping them before that happens, or something? But normally it would be as soon as they enter the U.S. waters, then we say, okay, this is now an action that we can identify as a threat to our security. And we've warned them that if you enter our waters, our sovereignty, we will destroy you. But when they're in the open sea, it does feel like premature based on the evidence that we have now. So yeah, we'd like to have, it feels like a change would be more evidence.
Well, yeah, more evidence. But so what bothers me is, I guess they're showing these videos of these strikes, right? But why don't they show the intelligence that leads to the? Here's something you and I talked about earlier, was that America's kind of overdo their classification of information anyway. Just like you mentioned, it's kind of like an old Cold War artifact that we've just gotten to the point of where we just have to secretize everything. Everything's compartmentalized. All information is classified in some form. Even the information that's not classified is sometimes still classified, in a weird kind of way. And it's gotten to the point where we, at literally every single aspect of every single operation is just classified as a matter of course, right? And so we have these situations where these drug boats, we probably have information on it. We probably have satellite photos of this, getting loaded in Venezuela and where it's
right. So say we have human assets who have infiltrated, basically spies within the cartel that are giving us this information.
Right. And
that's
so
essentially, should we protect them?
Yeah, well, see that of course we would do, right? But it's different to say like, all right, if it's not a piece of information that is directly contributing to a like an active operation, like either active undercover agents or like like after we've blown up this boat, like there's nothing to protect anymore, right? The boat is gone. All of the pieces of information that led up to that boat are getting blown up or are essentially past in the past. So like I don't understand why we can't just say, this is the information, this is where we got, documentation of it. And I mean, obviously if it's something where there's an undercover agent who's, taking photos and sending them back to us and that's the only information we've got, but we have this information present. I don't see why we wouldn't just be able to say like, look, for any Democrat that has a problem with this or for anybody that's got a problem with this,
Yeah.
we're going to take you in the skiff, we're going to show you the data that led to this event, and then afterwards you're duty bound to go out and say, all right, I trust that this is correct now. I can't tell you why. I can't show you the information because it's classified and needs to remain classified. But we've seen it, and we try. I don't understand why we can't do that. Why can't we do
So
that?
here's a couple things, and these are some things I sort of don't know, but lead me to it. One is that Venezuela is not has not been against this as much as they were when we first started sinking and confiscating the boats.
Right.
So that would indicate that we're at least showing their State Department enough intelligence that they are satisfied with it.
Sort of.
That could be like some back channels are happening. I feel like if none of that was happening to there, that there would be more, or that Venezuela is unhappy or so threatened by these organizations that they're happy to have. They would
I mean,
essentially like to kill them themselves if they had the capability.
but
So
they're still,
they're
just so that for the record, they're still objecting to this. Like, at least for the record, they're objecting. They may not be serious
okay.
about it. They may not be like really objecting hard, but they are still like on the record saying America's doing this. They have no right to. They have no information
Okay.
from us. They're still saying that officially. Now that may
Okay.
just be them trying to cover themselves. It may just be like,
Majority, right. Washington is official position is we want regime change in Venezuela.
yeah, that's
Right.
fair.
Maduro and right. So they have become a geopolitical foe. Right. Ever since Chavez, who started leftist property ownerships and started nationalizing like US oil and things like that to benefit the poor. But then when he passed away from health things, thinking things would sort of normalize and be a little bit more of a shift back towards normalized capitalism a little bit, hasn't under Maduro. And we've had to take in huge numbers of refugees. And we used to have a geopolitical ally who was wealthy in Venezuela and a steady supplier of oil on the international market that we can count on to steady, right? We just want prices to be steady. Now it's like, they're inconsistent as suppliers, their economies all up over, and Maduro is actively brutalizing any type of a legitimate political opposition. So he's and the U.S. is against him because of that. That's a pretty stated position, and so he's going to come out against aligning with any of the U.S.'s enemies, right? And his communist type of thing. So it's difficult to sort of separate his just general animus because he's a socialist communist and particular animus in this, but it feels like they're making token opposition, right? You said rather than principled opposition, that they might have their own intelligence. They don't want to give Trump cover, the U.S. cover to do this because what it could mean. But I mean, in international waters, the boats that are coming from Venezuela. It is a thing, right, to use our military on any boat in international waters that we feel like, hey, this is something that we've said or that is bringing something dangerous in the United States, and we feel like it's in our interest to destroy it without showing that they've made attempts like, please turn back, we're tracking you, our missiles are locked on you, you will, if you don't stop, this is done. But the drug trade is is the type of thing I think you almost need to specialize in, because they are willing to endure huge losses
Yeah.
because they reap such huge windfalls for what does get through. They're
Right.
willing to accept losses, and their loss of human life is just, and the valuation of human life is very different from ours. But I
Right.
don't think we should lose track, obviously, of American system and value of human life just because our enemies are willing to send their
Right.
people off to the slaughterhouse.
I mean,
So
for example, like,
I would like it. The changes I would like to have would be, we have some way of publicly of warning them and confirming that they've received our warning, that we're locked
right.
on, that we're considering them a threat, that they're going to need to prove to us they're not a threat,
Right.
and as soon as they enter a U.S. territorial or U.S. sovereign waters within 200 miles of U.S. coastline, then we take the action, and
Yeah.
not until then. I think
Or yeah.
that's a, well, not perfect. I think it's a step towards a reasonable sort of security.
Yeah, or some kind of. I mean, I don't see. Obviously, I don't understand all of the logistics behind this. I don't know if we can,
Mm.
track and say, listen, we're going to send a cutter out to you, stay there, or something like that. But one thing that I think, Trump's claiming that some of these are like essentially submarines, like they're
Well,
like
yeah,
specialized.
they do have submarines, but the ones we're attacking, I thought, were above the
Well,
water, like
one of them,
speedboats.
at least
Okay,
one of them, he claimed was a sub. So I'm like, that
okay,
would be pretty. I don't know, damning evidence, like it would be
yeah.
pretty condemning. Like if you got a sub and you're a private citizen, like why do you have a sub? You know what I mean? Like, but I don't know. I mean,
But
maybe that's just like
well,
they're
and that's
too
the type of thing. It's like if you're doing a pleasure cruise, right? Even if you're flying, if you're doing a flight, you
right,
put a manifest, you register a flight
right,
plan with your thing, and then you're following that flight plan. Nobody thinks you're sus.
yeah,
You take off with no flight plan, with no manifest, and you start acting real skiwampus, people are going to get sus. And that's these boats. It's like, if you want us to not assume you're a threat, have a manifest, have a plan of where you're going, and then follow that plan, within what we
right,
would call normal deviations.
yeah, a
And
couple more. Is there
right,
something
okay.
like that for boats? I don't know enough about like the international shipping
Well, right.
community to know.
If you
Is
don't
there
want to
like
get
a
nuked, they better start doing something like that for boats. I know big
maybe
cruise boats or things like that. Yeah, would have a manifest, because if they sink, we want to know who's on it. And when they come into port, right before customs goes, you need a manifest. What cargo? What things do you
yeah,
have? What are you bringing into our
private
country?
private stuff too though? Like I mean, I'm trying
If
to
you're if
imagine.
you're
I'm trying to
if you're an
imagine.
international boat going to another country, right, you have to go through customs, right?
Right.
You have
Well,
to declare
right.
what are
That
you bringing. So
yeah,
normally, yeah, you'd have to hand over a printed manifest. This
that's a
is
good
sort
point.
of right now. If you're going within, like, if you were going from, yeah, New York to Carolina, you don't
Right.
have to do that.
Sure.
But
Sure. Okay.
if you're going right between countries,
Right.
which is sort of what when they're 300 miles north of Venezuela, they're not just going from one side of Venezuela to another,
Right. Right.
right?
Right. Okay.
And so now the one caveat in this, and this we'll have to do a follow up on the story, is the military person, I forget his name, but who was in charge of this program, resigned this week
Yeah.
at
Saw
the
that.
Pentagon. And his reasons for resigning have not been made known, but it's basically been seen that he's unhappy with something, how the program's been running, or what he's been directed to do. And so, like an officer says, for him, it's crossed the line and he's resigning.
Right.
So that I think is why we're having this conversation. Why I feel like the program needs scrutiny is if
Right.
people who are privy to all that information are being uncomfortable with how it's being operated, then we should, as civilians, hey, we want civilian oversight. If the military is
Right.
uncomfortable with it, that's a reasonable time for us to want.
Yeah. So I normally I would say absolutely right, and I still want the civilian oversight, but
Mhm.
like Trump just faces so much nonsense from
Yeah,
like people who just don't like him that it's like that's part of the problem with this knee jerk like crying wolf with Trump all
yeah,
the time is because now when someone resigns under Trump's supervision, it's like I almost don't even register it. It's like,
yeah,
oh, another general is being belligerent. Big deal. Like, but if it was like anybody but Trump, I'd be like, oh, whoa, we need to take a look at this. But now
yeah,
because of Trump, it's
yeah.
like, oh well. So let's pivot to
Good.
Argentina. Why don't you give us a little bit of the history behind, because I know we're sending this huge aid package, or
So
so
yeah,
so to
so
speak.
Argentina again. So in the recent history, the U.S. was involved in South America and that until September 11th, 2001, which
Right.
shifted our whole attention to the Middle East, anti-terrorism. The war on drugs became a
Right.
lower priority, and we weren't sending as much money. We just weren't. South America was sort of very much back burner,
Right.
and Argentina, right? Argentina in the 20th century, like around World War II, was very prosperous, right? You might know that there were a lot of Italians that immigrated to Argentina. And it
Right.
was a big thing, like when they decided to either come to the US or go to Argentina, that was our decision because both were rising their economies about the same rate,
Right.
right? And so there was this Argentinian prosperity, and they were westernized, and they had all these things, but that sort of bubble burst. Now, there's a lot of documentaries you can read on this, but their economy, right? It wasn't this smooth upward trajectory, right? As things
Right.
happen, right? Markets will fluctuate, and they've had a wide variance in their governance.
Yeah.
And then maybe you've heard of the Perones, the
Hmm.
Perones. All right,
Negative.
Eva Peron. Have you heard "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina"? Right.
No.
Or the musical. There was a big musical. Madonna played Eva Peron.
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
Okay. Now I know what you're talking about.
"Don't
Yeah.
Cry for Me,
Yeah.
Argentina."
Yeah. Okay.
So
Right.
these were the first major leftists that took power in Argentina. Were the Peronists, and then
Okay.
the Perones died, and then Eva took over, and
Like,
they're still the largest sort of controlling political party on the left.
they're like little fish, right? That bite you in the. I'm kidding.
They're the Peronis. The Peron, the Peron family, and followers of the essentially Peronist leftists. It's their own sort of Argentinian style. But when they were in power, and they've done this several times, their monetary policy has been very loose. Let me
Okay.
say, not British standard, and then they've printed a lot of money, and so they've had this hyperinflation, like
Yes.
to a degree, and where it's disincentivized work and everything, and things collapsed, and basically then all of a sudden no one will accept anything but dollars. This has
Yeah.
happened several times, so and then they've had to kind of rebuild. So this is part of their unsteady
Right.
curve, and
Right.
then they nationalize industries, and when the left, and then they go back to a right capitalist who sort of stabilize things, and then once things are stabilized, everybody votes again for a leftist who wants to give away everything and run up all the and print money.
Yeah.
So more recently, they had a really bad run, and they elected a right wing or a more conservative president, Milei, if you've heard him. He
Very good.
he
Yeah.
he fancies himself as a sort of an Argentinian Trump, a
Right.
little more populist, and certainly more conservative on the fiscal policy side. Though he's
Right.
still a little more of a globalist than Trump would be.
Sure.
But he's not a Peronist, and he's not. And he immediately took measures that started stabilizing the economy and bringing down inflation and stuff.
Right.
One of the big, and he's an ally. He set himself up as a political ally, geopolitical ally of Trump. That he'll stand up with us in the UN when everybody else is like condemning the U.S. foreign policy.
Keep
He's an Argentinian's an ally. Sorry.
keep talking. I got somebody at the door. I gotta let in.
Okay.
Okay.
So Trump and this guy are getting along. They're doing really well, and he has successfully stabilized the economy. Now, the big thing that is hanging over Argentina's economy is they have a lot of debt, international debt that they owe to
Right.
other countries, and so they essentially operate with two currencies: the dollar and their Argentinian peso. They use the American dollar there as much, right? Because it's stabilized, right? People know that they can't just print more of it, like
Right.
anything. But having confidence in the peso So Trump. So anyway, they're getting to the point where
So they get a
they're running low on
swap.
dollars
Right.
essentially, and where Trump has agreed that he will swap, he'll send them $20 billion worth of dollars, but as a swap, a currency swap. Essentially, they're
Right.
giving us, we're buying it. Right? It's not just like here's some money for free. We're taking their
Right.
money and to help them stabilize in the near term, and then essentially we should be able to currency swap that back when we need to.
Right. In theory.
But he's conditioned it upon Melee. Well, Melee will be in power for at least 2 more years, but there are like midterm elections.
Right.
And right now, Melee's party is about that. If Melee's party loses power, right, in these elections, that he will stop that program and stop buying it, right, which is fairly unprecedented.
Right.
Now, right,
Wait. Trump's doing something unprecedented? No. How could I think I'm going to die if not surprised?
yeah. Now his and this is, and the State Department's sort of justification is the Peronists. We are so bad about printing money and doing things. We can't trust them that they're if we do, they're going to make our investment worthless. We're going to lose this money if the other party gets in power.
Right.
That's how they're saying it. But it comes across, since the elections are later this year or so, as him heavily putting his finger on the scale of another country's elections.
Right.
And saying that it's one thing for him to say it quietly to an ambassador or something like that, but for him to say it openly,
Right.
like that this is conditioned on, now we're buying dollars now, but it's like, it's a gradual, because we don't want to like fluctuate the market. But
Right.
essentially, if the elections go badly for Milei's party, the stated action from Trump is that buyback will end.
Right.
So now, yeah. So that's the question here.
That's the give. Obviously, so one of the chief, of course, criticisms of this so far is that we're just like they get the benefit of the stability of the dollar, we take on the risk of the volatility of the peso.
The Argentinian
Now,
peso.
I don't know how risky that is. Obviously, in theory, this is supposed to stabilize both currencies, and in theory would settle itself in theory again. But I can't help but wonder, and I want your opinion on this. I can't help but wonder if this is a lot of this is like just Trump helping out political allies, which he's known to do, and Trump attacking political opponents, which he's known to do. Like he kind of attacks the Venezuelan opponent. He kind of helps the Argentinian ally. So I'm wondering if this is just like, because I should note that there are other nations like Chile or Colombia, for example, that are kind of Western oriented, but Trump's not doing
Chile
anything
very
with
much.
them.
Colombia has a little bit of a leftist who's voted against this in the UN recently. But here's part of the thing, and I know we're going to talk about China later, but China's fingerprints are all over this Argentinian deal, right? Now, one of the criticisms, and you're right to be skeptical, that there are a lot of Trump supporters, donators, other people who have invested heavily in Argentina since Milei took office.
Right.
And doing this helps protect their investments, or helps to stand that their investments do well. So people close to Trump could be lobbying him for this. And that's, that it will have a sort of a disproportionate benefit on people who have been invested in Argentina, which are elites. Obviously, I have not invested in Argentina. You have not invested in Argentina. The common man has not invested in Argentina. But elites who are trying to support this new president, this type of action helps them stabilize their investments, right, their risk. And so that's has to be accounted for with a little bit of cynicism. The other thing is China has made lots of inroads to them and try loans to them, but Argentina also has some rare earths and some things that we'd want from them if when we talk about China, which will make more sense. But it's also in a vacuum, like China's not buying crops from America, soybeans. We'll talk about that in a little bit too. They are buying them from Argentina.
Right.
So it's some people have been like, "Hey, these are our competitors in the soybean market. Why are we giving them money?"
Right.
So there are some questions now. The Secretary of the Treasury is trying to sue those, though they're more focused right now on China. This seems like something like we're doing a little bit of. We've stated kind of what our limit is, like,
Right.
but we're buying some dollars now, and we haven't written them a blank check for $20 billion. We haven't given
Right.
all the money there, and it is conditioned upon us seeing essentially the government act responsibly, the way they've told us, the way
Right.
they've acted, and that all of a sudden another leftist party that we can't that has not made any agreements with us and that acts
Right.
fiscally very differently doesn't take power.
Right.
But you're
Now,
right. We should. I guess here's a part of the thing. The Democrats have come out, sort of with your sort of cynicism, not outright opposing it,
sure.
but right, because they're not against foreign aid. They kind of like
Yeah.
us giving money to other
Right.
countries. They don't. They just don't like that Trump's in charge of who that money gives to, or that he can select, or that his people are going to make money from it. Now there are
Right.
elites in the Democratic Party who have had investments in Argentina and are going to make money from this as well.
Of
So
course.
maybe that's why they're not fully coming out, and
Cool.
the no kings are not saying no money to Argentina, but they are trying to complain about it and give him a little bit of
Right.
negative, like, hey, why are you doing this? But
I'm,
Trump has not said no money to foreign countries, but he wants it to advance our interests
of
and to
course.
be in control of, right. So
Now,
enough
does
people in the State Department have convinced him or Millet that this is in his interests.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they view Argentina like it's like a beacon country, like it's if they take care of Argentina and shift it into Western alignment, or whatever, assist in its stability in Western alignment, that everybody around will kind of follow suit, hopefully. But I don't know. I wonder. Democrat. It's funny that the Democrats now, like if I rewound this like a month, every single Democrat would be like crying soft power. And then this is like us utilizing soft power. And it's like, wait. Not soft power now. I wouldn't mean that kind of soft
We don't
power. I
want
mean,
Trump to use soft power. We want the credit. Like, especially if this works, because Argentina, these right-wing things have been working.
yeah,
It's like they're almost worried that this will work out. Like they're
yeah,
talking up the risk, but there's very real risk that if Malay, if he's not lying and corrupt, that if he upholds this in a way that this could be successful and it will essentially, they don't want to give Trump wins or something like that.
right. Well, of course, yeah. You can't give Trump a win, and you can't give like conservatism a win, which is it's maybe adjacent to this too, right? This is basically the
Yeah.
the last bastion of like non-Marxist South American, essentially. So we're trying to preserve that, but I wonder. I don't know exactly how valuable it is to us. I mean, it seems like kind of a small fish, but I don't know. I don't know. I'll
Well,
admit that my
right. Well, I think if they're willing to ramp up like lithium production, like battery production, or things that when we talk to China, right, they're Argentina is willing to be friendly with us in a way, especially if things go bad with China, which
yeah,
maybe it would lead us into that. Right now, I'm willing to. I don't think it's too far overboard, but I think we should watch it. And there is potentially, they say, an additional $20 billion that will be matched from
yeah,
private.
saw
Right,
that.
right. So the U.S. will put 20 in, another 20 million from private. And so we'll see that, right? But this is, as long as there's not naked corruption, but it is sort of unprecedented for the president before an election to sort of condition his
Openly,
full
yeah.
monetarily support on a political ally
Yeah.
doing well
Openly.
in a free
I mean,
election.
this is the
Yeah.
kind of thing we do with the CIA all the time, clandestinely, but not like, with it, not just like
Yeah. So
wide open, like,
it's very naked, and ultimately it might be a mistake, but it invites scrutiny, and it will be part of his legacy.
yeah. Now, is
So
that even
hopefully, Malay, he's sort of by doing this, he's sort of vouching for Malay. The
right?
Malay's going to be non-corrupt, and the Malay's the guy to bring Argentina to economic stability,
Now,
and a
it
player
also
and a strong ally to the U.S. If that doesn't happen, it's very embarrassing.
Well, and the other problem I can see with foresee coming up from this is that by putting your thumb on the scales like this, now it's like it makes every transaction between the two nations really hyper scrutinized now, because it's like then it's if Trump gets anything out of the deal at all, like even some investment indirectly, then all of a sudden it can turn into a quid pro quo thing where it's like, all right, you're really putting your thumb on the scale so that you get X or Y or Z or your friends benefit or this, that, and the other. I don't like. That's why I don't like Trump. I get that Trump is just brazen and everything is maximalized, but like, why can't he just tap dance a little bit? Just a
Maybe. I don't think Trump's going to live in Argentina. I don't think
no, of course
I
not.
don't think he's at his age. And I think that as we talked about China a little bit more, maybe this will feel more strategic.
I hope. I hope. So
As we talk to. So yeah, let's talk about
let,
China.
let's dig into China. This is the elephant in the room. So
Mhm.
obviously, China presents a wealth of threats to America and to the world. Um, one of those is that China seems to like to buy up all the farmland that seems to just miraculously be really close to military bases or like food processing plants or like water processing plants, which is just miraculously just so happens to be so close to these things. And I guess we've sort of kind of banned them from doing that going forward. I hope anyway. I don't know. It's kind of a weird scenario from this is another one of the situations where I'm on the fence because of course China itself isn't doing this, but the problem is you almost can't separate like any business in China from China, which
Well,
is
from the Chinese Communist Party, because
right.
they have only one party and they don't have freedom of political choice. If you're a Chinese citizen, you have to assume that you are represented officially and control, responsible to the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, well, and of course, and the other side of that coin too is that I mean, I think while we don't have any like law that prohibits us from selling to like non-citizens, as America was very investment heavy, growing up, we wanted to have people put their investments in the nation. But there's also no law that like requires us to. There's nothing like our law protects our citizenry from the loss of property. It doesn't protect random entities from like across the ocean from the same thing. So I don't think that we're by any means, compelled to sell these farmland to. Now, I do think we might be able to use it as like a leverage of some sort if the Chinese are actually good faith about because part of the problem is that the Chinese are facing like a food shortage and water shortage. So like this could just be above board theoretically. It could just be the Chinese needing food and needing water. And if that's the case, I don't see why we can't make that a mutual, a place where we can maybe start to develop mutual beneficials and respect. But if that's not the case, I mean, I would prefer a lot of these places that are buying up to be a little bit further away from military bases, a bit further. We got plenty of arable land. It doesn't all have to be by a base, So I don't know where we draw the line. Exactly. I mean, obviously we have drawn the line.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, we make sure we know, hey, we're noticing this, we're scrutinizing it. But yeah, I think by China investing in a lot of their food production in the U.S. is that I would generally take that as a something that disincentivizes them to hostilities against us. At
I
least
hope.
what we'd say a hot war, shooting war, right?
Right.
Because that would be the first thing. If they're getting consistent food supply from their farms here, that will stop if it turns into a hot war,
Yeah,
right?
very true. Very
And
true.
right, so it's different between them, right?
Dollar
So
concern.
right. So that almost incentivizes them to keep things, you know, uh,
I hope.
cold at the warmest, right?
Yeah.
Now, China warps everything around it in their thing in their sphere. So, and we have to understand, right? We can't be skeptical like the left and say, oh, China, like in the past, we would move jobs there because we didn't take them as seriously as a threat, and there was so
Right.
much poverty and things like that. They've come a long way,
Yep.
and they want us to fail now.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're not benign actors. They want us to fail.
Right.
They sell things to us, but they're competing for influence in other countries, and
Right.
just this, and they want the economy. They want to disrupt supply chains and feel like that they can move stuff around. So just this week, right, they put export extractions on certain rare earths, which they have a dominant control in the market,
For
and
now.
certain batteries, lithium batteries, and other
Right.
things that can very much disrupt it in a way that's supposed to make prices spike temporarily, and to make the government, make Trump and the U.S. look bad or
Right.
upset people,
Yeah.
especially right now. Like, yeah, as we consumers can just say, well, I'm not going to buy a new laptop, or I'm going to use my phone for another year or something like that. But right now in the U.S., there's a lot of investment going on in AI,
Yes.
and in data warehousing and things like that at a level that's not just the average consumer.
Right.
And that's where these supply chains are hitting them.
Yeah.
And so this is why, right, it's going to be years before we're going to get rare earths out of Ukraine. But
Yeah.
why we're right, and we're trying, and we're supposedly right, we need to start developing these things otherwise, right? Supposedly we can develop. We're developing Argentina as a source of alternate source of lithium
And
batteries,
Wyoming.
and that, and then yeah, Jamie Dimon. So this was an article I sent to you,
Yes.
and that I saw that. So Jamie Dimon, for those who don't know, uh, he's been critical of Trump's economic policies, especially as Trump has been taking an antagonistic of China.
Yeah.
Right? He's changed his tune recently. Right? He's gotten to the point where he realizes China is not acting in a benign way, and that Trump's concerns that we need strategic, manufacturing in this country, not just in China. We need strategic production of rare earths and
Right.
lithium batteries and things like that. That we can allow trade there, but we need some of those industries here.
Yeah. We need that. Yeah.
And, right, for strategic, because China can just one day unilaterally, since they're a one-party state, just
Right.
say, without any sort of debate or rule of law, just say, boom, we're not going to sell this to the U.S. right now.
Right.
And that type of control, we can't see that much control. So yeah, so he has decided to commit $10 billion into strategic things, essentially that Trump wants in factories and in rare earths and in things that where we're vulnerable to China. Now,
Right.
this is not a benefit that we're going to realize on the short
Right.
term, right?
Right.
This is all something, but it's people realizing, hey, this policy isn't going away, and it's good policy. And we'd hope it's essentially he's endorsing this, saying we hope that even if the Democrats or another political party takes over, that they would continue this policy against China. And
Knock
so,
on wood.
because this is good policy, that I invested in things because for strategic reasons, I feel like it's important that we have this capability, even if we can't mine those rare earths as cheaply or as easily as we can just fill out a web page and get them from China.
Yeah. Would that be nice?
But but they are available, and even though it takes time to essentially get those resources online, that it's important for us,
Right. Well, and
right, as a country.
that's the genius of Trump in the first place that I never fully appreciated, is that he kind of looks at America like it's a giant resource bucket, right? And in order to develop those resources, you have to put some money into it and tap it and set up the infrastructure. But after you have, then you've got all this extra money that, like, essentially you just created, you just generated wealth by, right. And now that Wyoming has a rare earth deposit that it might unbalance the entire system, which creates some dangers too, because I've always contended that the biggest threat that China faces to us is not that they're going to just take over Taiwan, not that they're going to be an economic giant, but the fact that they're actually facing a collapse. They're actually going to be in desperation, right? Or we're going to be in desperation if they do end up overtaking us economically. One of the two is going to take place, right? We're either going to find ourselves in a situation where China must go to war to preserve any semblance of power, or we have to go to war to prevent China from overtaking us. Either way, we are kind of in this weird spot where if China
yeah.
So what was one of the dangers, of course, is then if we no longer need them for rare earths, that puts them in a really vulnerable spot, right? If especially if we no longer need them for semiconductors also. Like if we get both of those off of the China table, then I don't even know what they have to offer us really. I mean, they make a bunch of stuff that we can import. We do import, but we don't have to. None of it's important after that.
So that same argument is made about the Middle East. Like, well, if we develop our own oil where we don't have to import from the Middle East, now all of a sudden, it'll destabilize things if they can't sell their oil to the U.S. Right? Obviously, that hasn't happened. Right. Right now, we can meet all of our own oil needs and export oil out. We don't have to import any Middle Eastern oil to meet our oil production needs. Right. And that hasn't destabilized them. Right. And alternate fuels, haven't destabilized them. They're set up to make money from alternate fuels and other things like that. They're anticipating that type of things. Now, China, they're diverse enough. We just want we would still buy their rare earths, but we want to take away their ability to strong arm us with it.
Right.
And say, like, if we don't sell you our rare earths, then so we want to take away their dominance in rare earths.
Sure. Yeah.
The other thing is, this can be this is the type of thing they've sent out to the Secretary of Treasury and other people. This relationship they want to handle with some delicacy. It's not necessarily a Trump style bull in a china shop thing that maybe is appropriate for Europe or even South America. The Asian culture kind of thing. They want people who are a little bit more low key and a little more careful in what they say to let them know that, because we don't want this to get into a hot war. We don't want to get needlessly provocative, but we need to let them know that in response to the stuff you're doing to us, we are going to respond by raising tariffs against you on all your goods, which is going to impact all of your industries, and we're going to develop our own strategic resources. And so they see that we're not inept, and we're not just going to take whatever they do, but do that in such a way where it's like, but we'd really like to be, we don't want to conquer China. We just want you to live in peace with your neighbors and with the world, and not keep trying to undermine us. Now, I know you're afraid of us losing the reserve currency. Well, I don't have that same fear when it comes to China. I think China has always pegged their currency to the U.S. dollar, and we've always tried to tell them that we want them to float it. We want it to be a true international where currencies, the Chinese. What is it? I forget the name of the Chinese.
The yuan.
Yeah. Right. They've always pegged it. Well, it's like, it's almost, unless it's changed, and the Communist Party determines what the yuan's worth. So if you become the reserve currency, it's got to become something that the market fluctuates on. If they want a currency that they can peg to something as a party, and then they don't want a reserve currency. So I don't see them as wanting to overtake that.
So they don't want to take they don't want to just snatch it theirs personally, but they do want to kind of set up a new axis, I think, through BRICS. I don't think that I think they just want to. The biggest thing is, I think, and this is where a lot of these countries in BRICS are trying to kind of hedge their bets a little bit, and why our reserve currency is losing its momentum is because we're using this economic sanction / tariff game far too much, in my opinion. Right now, I mean, obviously, there's reasons for that, and I don't like tariffs anyway, but it's like, if everything that we do, every time we get involved in a situation where there's boom, sanctions, boom, tariffs, it's like the first thing we throw out. And right now it's pretty effective because right now they don't have any answer to that, right? They basically just have to eat it. But if they didn't have to eat it, by setting up another axis, another reserve currency, and then they'd be like, all right, fine, we'll leave America because BRICS has everything we need, and it's not tariffing us, 50% across the board. We're not sanctioned by them because they're saying, then the sanctions lose their teeth, and then it's like, then we don't have any. Then we not only lose the reserve currency eventually, but we also lose the ability to like sway things just economically, and that's what I'm worried about. But it even more than that, I think that it's just a good business practice to like develop our own resources, right? I think that
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
now I
Yeah.
am skeptical about Jamie Dimon. I think that he's getting on board, but I also think that he's playing a game, and that game is like the game that these billionaires can play, and that is like, look, I'm going to invest in this stuff. It's probably, by the way, everything that he's investing in is just good stuff to invest in anyway, like AI and tech and da 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 da, right? All the standard stuff that you would want to put your money in right now anyway. And then, like most giant financiers, he's going to say something in favor of it, like Elon Musk does. And then all of a sudden, just saying something in favor of it tilts everything up by 5%. And it's like all of a sudden he's insta made, tons and tons and tons of money. I wish one day that I could just say, hey, I think, Dogecoin is going to do really well. And then Dogecoin shoots up 25 cents. That would be great. But that's what I think the game that these geniuses, these billionaires play. And I think that part of this is just him just taking advantage of he's putting all of his money in places that like you just would that's just where the money is.
I think that's fair. The only way I'm giving him credit for this is that he was a departure. He was critical and saying
Sure.
the exact opposite earlier this year, and
Right.
so the fact that he's at least acknowledging that he's changed his mind and has
Right.
come around on this ideology. If he'd been quiet or if he'd been supportive all along, then yeah, so. And we'll see, and hopefully that will encourage more people, even people that don't like Trump, but just want
Right.
say, hey, this is opportunity to make money and potentially and it's good policy that we know the Democrats should favor and should continue in the future.
Yeah. But they're not
And
going
then
because that's the problem.
and I think that's it. I think this is bipartisan common sense. This is
Right.
a lot of things. Bipartisan. This should be common sense that both parties should agree on. We haven't
Now,
been able to count on that for the
now
Democratic Party.
here's a question for you. Philosophically, do we have the right to keep China from overtaking us economically? Do we have the right to like because we are basically pressuring them and we're doing the best that we can to try to slow their growth, to try to stimulate ours. That's just I think what all the nations do, in a competitive way to an extent.
Trump has been reactionary to China. So
Mm,
China has had restrictions on American goods in China and tariffs on American things being sold there for a long time, and he's
sure.
tried to do this in reaction to that. He
Yeah.
says he would like a fair playing field if China will play fair. He
Right.
says that China is not because the CCP likes to manipulate things. They don't like total free markets. They've had to give a lot more capitalism and free markets than they would allow, but really
Right.
full-on capitalism is essentially freedom. And they don't really want to do that. They still want the credit for, we're the ones who direct this. They want to direct state things. And one of the things they can do is restrictions. Restrict
Right.
exports, which they did this week, but restrict imports or do tariffs. And so Trump is just trying to react to them, right? But the people
Right.
who are going out there say, look, I know Trump is reacting to you at 159% tariff on all your goods. Might seem extreme, but we're willing
Right.
to bring that down if you stopped acting like jerks. Like, I
Right.
mean, and
Not going to happen.
and for a long time, right, we supported and let you get away with this to
Right.
game the system, but you don't need that anymore. Right.
Right.
It's the same thing with Eastern Europe. Like, yeah, we have the Marshall Plan and we rebuilt your economies, but you don't need that anymore.
Right.
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 And it's irresponsible for you to expect us to keep essentially subsidizing you with all this money unequally and not
Right.
want to get back to what we just think is just a fair playing field.
Right.
And for
Right. Fair
them
enough.
to, and then trying to manipulate us with their rare earths and other stuff because all we want is a fair playing field. This is CCP stuff, and they're obviously aligning, making friendships with anybody that's against us.
Of course.
Is why? Yeah, it's warped. So just for the common man, yes, the elites are interested in these things because they're going to benefit from them if they're invested in a way that's won't affect us as directly, but will affect the security of. And ultimately, I think that while this is not a quick fix, moving towards having more friends in South America and having more aspects that we can get things that we're getting from China from other places will help our national security and autonomy.
Okay, fair enough. I know you got to get out of here, so we'll just wrap this up here, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. We didn't have many people on today, but for those who did show up, please, we definitely appreciate you. I'm back in the saddle now, so I'm going to be here every week, every day, twice a week, and I'll be able to really dedicate my time to this now. Like now that I've finally finished moving. Thanks so much. We'll catch you guys next time on Common Mansplaining.
Keep it coming.